From League Safe World Headquarters, it's Fantasy Football Almost Daily. With Paul Charchia, Matt Harrison, Christian Peterson, and Brian Johnson.
It's Wednesday. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Weekly Almost Daily Panic Room. Ooh, very exciting. This is where it's our game show format where two people, contestants, battle to see who can give the most compelling argument about whether you should be panicking over 5 different players. Now, our reigning champion, Christian Peterson. Would you like to have any words? And as reigning champion, you get to say
I like
something.
to lead by example. And
Okay.
I think my example over the first 3 weeks has been stellar.
It has been. You are undefeated. You're 3-0.
Yeah.
This week's challenger, Brian Johnson, we've relegated Matt Harrison. You're back, though.
Self-proclaimed people's champ. I had ones of people on Twitter telling me I should have won.
That you should have won?
Yes, so
Okay.
Upwards
I'm
of
back.
one?
Yeah. No, ones at a time.
Ones at a time? Okay. Very nice.
Slowly tapered off. Or
Yes.
not too slowly, rapidly, I should say. But yes, I'm ready for the challenge.
So this is our game show format where I will throw out a player. I will ask our contestants to decide if the appropriate level of panic is none, some, or acute. And then they will try to build an argument. This is less about who's actually right, but more about who's built the best argument and who puts together the best case. We begin with DeAndre Hopkins. 2 touchdowns this year, which is not the end of the world, but the yardage numbers have been bad, and he's been soundly outplayed from a fantasy football perspective by rookie Will Fuller. We will begin with DeAndre Hopkins. Is the appropriate level of concern some, none, or acute? As reigning champion, you get to go first.
Oh, absolutely, I do. This may surprise you. I'm going to go acute
Ooh.
on DeAndre Hopkins.
All right.
Let's
hear your
start
case.
things off with a bang here. So he does have 2 touchdowns, so it hasn't been a complete disaster so far, but he's been held to 54 yards or less in 3 of 4 games. Last week, Brock Osweiler was going bonkers in the first half. He literally was not even looking at Hopkins, didn't even throw to him. Had 1 catch by the end of the game. I think he had 2 or 3 targets. And the targets are the issue here. Last year, at this time through week 4, Hopkins led the NFL with 60 targets.
Wow, he had 60 through 4
That's
games.
a lot. Yeah,
That's
this year's leader
crazy.
through 4 weeks is Mike Evans with 50. So
Yeah.
Hopkins was all over the field last year. However, when you go back and look at I went back to look at fantasy points per target for DeAndre Hopkins
Okay.
to get a measure for kind of his efficiency, to see whether what he did last year was all because he was targeted so often. And sure enough, last year he scored 1.7 fantasy points per target. Among the top 24 wide receivers at the end of the year last year, that was just 16th. So he was not nearly as efficient as
When you
a lot
get
of the
targeted
other
that
guys.
much, though, right, it's going to be hard to maintain a high level, that high of a level
True.
of productivity on
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, the point being here,
I mean, like Mike Wallace is extremely efficient under that standard because he's only getting targeted like 4 times a game, and he's
Right.
got 3 touchdowns.
yeah, but Antonio Brown was far more efficient, and he was also targeted a lot
Yes, it can be done.
last year. So, point being, he was not very efficient with those targets last year. This year, his targets are down to 33, which is fewer than a guy on his own team, Will Fuller, which I don't think anybody anticipated. So he's getting half
No.
the targets. The quarterbacking situation isn't really any better. Osweiler isn't really any better than Brian Hoyer was last year. And he's even less efficient this year. He's 1.6 fantasy points per target this year. So you drafted DeAndre Hopkins as a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. That's what you were hoping to get. That's the level of draft
he was
capital
roughly,
you had
he was
to
probably
invest.
wide receiver 5 off the board.
And he's not the most efficient guy, and he's not getting the targets. He's not going to get anywhere near 196 targets, I think it was, last year. Maybe half that at this point is what he's on pace for. So I think this is a big problem. I think Will Fuller is legit, and he's legitimately taking away, half of Hopkins' targets, and I don't think he's going to return wide receiver 1 numbers because
All right,
of it.
and obviously you think if it's acute, you think it's going to continue.
I do.
All right.
Well,
Brian.
I have no choice but to not go acute, because if I do, I can't win the point, right? So
No,
now I have to
you
pivot.
can, but you have to make a materially different argument. That's part of the advantage of going first.
All right,
You have to find-
I heard
you
a
have to find
lot
a new
of.
way.
All right, I'll stick with the cute then.
Okay.
I
You
heard
need
a lot
to
of-
show the board, by the
Well,
way.
I
The people-
changed it, but now I'm going
You're
back to
back
cute.
to- okay.
So
Once
just trust
again.
me, it says the cute. No. Let me go here. Come on, my
That-
turn.
I think we may need a judge's ruling on
I
that.
really
Your
have to
answer
have it on
is
the board.
No,
huh?
what
answer
just,
is-
just put all
everyone's
three
time.
answers on there, and then you'll win.
Well,
no
I was
matter
going
what.
to. I thought I couldn't score the point if I gave the same answer.
No, you can. You just need to be nimble enough to provide a different angle on the same answer, which is not easy to do. Look, it's a big disadvantage. Can you score the point? Yes. Acute. Can you score the point? Yes.
I
But
mean,
you've got.
I should be getting more credit for winning week after week, despite having to go up against people who don't know the rules and who are
Well,
brazenly
all I heard
flaunting
was
the
a lot of
rules.
like, I think he had this many targets. Maybe.
No, he did. Those were all stats.
Here are the numbers you
They're
need to know, Charge. Right now, Hopkins owns 23% share of Houston's targets. Last year,
23%.
he had 47% of Houston's targets. That's
Right.
more than half gone. Next highest guy was Demaryius Thomas with 40%, by the way. Last year, Hopkins also led all wide receivers in red zone targets with 29. He's on pace for 13 right now. So you have to be really worried about Hopkins. Fuller is legit. They won't roll as much double coverage on Hopkins, I don't think, because Fuller is that good. But still, Hopkins was the only show in town last year. But now Fuller is there, so you got to be really worried. He's not nearly going to produce what he did last year. So I'm selling at the highest point, which won't be against the Vikings, of course.
No, that's
But,
that's
his
a problem.
next
Yeah,
big
it's not
game,
getting
I'm
any
selling
better this
Hopkins.
week, that's for sure.
No. Well, as I told you, just because you give the same answer doesn't mean you can't get the point, and you didn't get the point. So, maybe we need to reverse it so the champion has to work that much harder and has to go second in questions 1, 3, and 5. Because right now, the champion earns the right to go first on questions 1, 3, and 5. Maybe we'll have to flip it over next year. Or you could just give a different answer. You could have given some, and you could have given.
No,
given
I
some
couldn't do
reasons
that
for
to our
upside.
listeners because you should be worried about Hopkins. So go ahead.
Our second wide receiver to hit the panic room is Dez Bryant. Obviously, he's got the knee injury that some believe is really significant, some believe is not. There's a chance he doesn't play for several weeks. There's a chance he plays this Sunday. So this thing could go a couple of different directions. Dak Prescott's been more efficient than explosive in games. Mostly, he's been targeting guys like Cole Beasley over Dez Bryant. What is the appropriate level of concern for Dez Bryant? We begin with Brian.
I'll go with some.
Some.
It was going to be acute when Jerry Jones was the only source we had saying he'll be fine, might play this week, because I don't trust Jerry Jones as far as I could throw him.
How far could you throw him? Have you done any analysis
I could
of that?
throw him about as far as the football helmet that the fan threw at him in the tunnel last week. Did you see that?
that was
Right in the
pretty
face?
good.
That made my day. But
Well, he can't catch. He has terrible hands.
wasn't he like a fullback or something though in college? I know
Was
he
he?
he
Jerry
played
Jones
at
or something?
Alabama with
Okay.
Jimmy Johnson, and that's how that whole thing started back in the day. But whatever. Ian Rappaport says Dez will be out 1 or 2 weeks. I was thinking it would be longer. I was a little worried about a hairline fracture in his knee.
It sounds bad to me, too.
does.
Everyone
sounds
was
really
worried
bad.
when they came out and said that's what it was, and then all of a sudden over the weekend they said, just a bone bruise.
Yeah, it's just a bone bruise, but I'm going some. He proved he can get it done with Dak Prescott. We were worried about that after week 1, where he was practically invisible. Had 7 catches for 102 yards against Washington, 3 for 40 and a touchdown against Chicago, the game he got hurt. So when he comes back, I think he and Dak can put up good numbers. So I'll just go some. I'll trust Ian Rappaport. I won't trust Jerry Jones that'll play this week or has a good chance to. But I'll say worst case scenario 2 weeks, so just hold on to Dez.
Okay.
I'm still a little worried, so some.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to go with some as well, and it really is only related to the injury. I'm not worried about the Dak Prescott thing. He didn't target Dez much in week 1. As Brian alluded to, he came back in week 2, and then in week 3 after he was hurt pretty early in that game. So the numbers weren't there in week 3, but he was targeted in the red zone. So I think the production is going to be there. The question really just surrounds the injury. He's going to be out 1 more week. Is it 2? Is it 3? We just don't know. We've gotten such conflicting reports. But I also looked at the schedule, and the schedule is great for Dallas. If you look at the rest of the year, there's no real stoppers other than Minnesota in week 13. There's mostly middle of the road defense, and then in the playoffs, he gets the Giants, the Bucks, and the Lions. That might be about as favorable as you can get for the fantasy playoffs. So, and to be honest, even if for some reason they don't just hand the reins to Dak Prescott, if Tony Romo goes back under center, well, then it's even You could argue even better for Dez Bryant because he's always been Tony Romo's guy. So I don't know if the quarterback situation really affects this either way as well. So some concern because of the injury, but not for any other reason.
I love that you did the schedule analysis. Thought that was very good. I kind of don't entirely buy that Giants, Bucks, and Lions is that easy when the Giants have got Janoris Jenkins, who you can put on an opposing number one. That would be him. The Bucks are terrible. And then you've got Darius Slay, who could go on opposing number ones.
Sure.
And so I don't totally buy that part of your argument, but I like that you did the schedule analysis, which struck me as one whole level beyond what we got from Brian. I am giving you the second star as well. I know, it's sad, isn't it?
I hate this game.
You hate this game.
And I think I lost my marker.
It's right
I
there.
gotta find
It's right
It's
over.
r-
Oh, no,
it's right
that's,
there.
yeah, there you go.
There you go. Okay. Our third.
You're going to take your marker and go home.
Take it. Throw the marker.
I
I'm
might
rooting for
smash
you. I
this.
want you to know I'm rooting for you. I do not want this
sure.
thing to be a one-sided
Brian,
affair.
I want you to know that
I want
I'm
there to be
rooting
some,
for you,
some
too.
dramas in this.
I'd like this to be a close
Our
match.
third wide receiver to hit the panic room is Alshon Jeffrey. Alshon Jeffrey's been dinged up already. He's dinged up all the time. He's always dinged up. Quarterback concerns, if you believe that Jay Cutler could come back, that might be more of a concern for Alshon Jeffrey. But overall, the Bears' offense hasn't looked very good. He hasn't been targeted very much, which is also a concern. We figured he'd be a target hog. Kevin White had the 14-target game not long ago. What is the appropriate level of concern over Alshon Jeffrey? None, some, or acute? Let's find out, beginning with Christian.
I'm going to go with none on Alshon Jeffrey, and my answer to this actually changed a little bit this morning when we found out that Kevin White is going to be out for an extended period of time. We're not sure what that means, but he suffered the ankle injury in week 4, and it sounds like it is going to be a serious injury, and that's going to keep Kevin White out for a while. Before that, it really felt to me like, so the Bears in the offseason opted not to pay Alshon Jeffrey. They opted not to give him a long-term contract, and
Yes.
there was a lot of back and forth in the press about do they not think he's worthy of being a number one wide receiver. I think they even came out and basically said that they weren't sure that he is an elite level number one wide receiver, and it felt like through the first few weeks they were force-feeding the ball to Kevin White, who was ridiculously inefficient. He was dropping everything, but they were targeting him almost twice as often as they were Jeffrey, almost in an effort to prove that, hey, we were right about Jeffrey. We've got this rookie, the second-year guy, Kevin White, who we think is going to take over, and then we were going to have been right about not paying Jeffrey. But now they have no choice. He's the only guy that they have to throw to. Brian Hoyer has looked great in the last couple of games, might even be better than Jay Cutler, might hold that job. And so, again, with Kevin White out, I think the Bears are going to have no choice but to make Alshon Jeffrey a target hog the rest of the season.
Okay. Brian?
I'll go with some.
Also some. No, you did none.
You did
I did none.
You're doing
I
some.
kinda pivoted on the
no
fly.
level of concern. All
You
right.
always have to be concerned with Alshon Jeffrey because he seems like he adds a new injury to his growing list of concerns every week. It's like knee, hamstring, ankle. It's always something like that. As CP mentioned, and you mentioned, Kevin White was hogging all the targets. White played about a game and a half, or in his last game and a half, he got hurt this past week. He had 23 targets in that game and a half. Jeffrey's had 25 all year. So, but that's because Jeffrey's getting double teamed. Kevin White is not a polished route runner. He's been seeing a lot of single coverage, and that's not going to change with him gone. I don't even know who the next man up is on the outside for the Bears, to be honest. You know, there's Eddie Royal in the slot, but Jeffrey is top 12 in yards right now, but he's an injury concern on a weekly basis. I think he gets a lot of coverage rolled his way, maybe even more now with White out. But again, White wasn't drawing double teams like Jeffrey was, so I'm just going to go with some here. And he's another sell-high candidate, I think, if he has some really good games. He's a guy I would move for maybe like an Odell Beckham, whose stock is down right now. So.
Right, you'd have to have a lot of good games before you're going to be able to do that, right? You can't sell Beckham. You can't sell him for Beckham now.
Not right now, but
No,
one good game this week and one other bad game for Beckham, maybe so. But we'll
maybe
see.
so. All right. This is close. Brian, take the star.
I feel like that was kind of
was
a
Pity star.
It's a pity. There was a little bit
You
of
can't
let's
have
keep it
no
close.
concern over Alshon.
You can't have. You're right. You can't have no concern.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
can't.
if you went into the season not understanding that he was injury prone, that's
doesn't-
on you.
Well, just because I had the concern doesn't mean I shouldn't be concerned then. If I did or
Well,
didn't have
I
it
mean,
in August, doesn't matter now.
You should have an eternal level of concern about Alshon Jeffrey's injury. I was assuming that our listeners were smart enough to know that he was going to be on the injury report all the time. Anyways,
That is still,
good start.
It
Good
was
job,
a concern,
Brian.
and it's still a concern.
Oh, thanks.
Speaking of Odell Beckham, our fourth of our 5 players to break down in the panic room, Odell Beckham. So far, he's got averaging 5.5 catches per game, 76 yards. He has not scored a touchdown, and I think most concerning is that you worry that now he's become a target for flags and disruption. Teams feel like they can get in his head. He's not producing on the field. He's not scoring, and now he's come out and said, I'm not having fun with the game. He's lost the love of the game, Odell Beckham, already. We're in week 5. So, the appropriate level of concern for Odell Beckham, none, some, or acute. Brian.
I'm going to ignore all the temper tantrum stuff and just worry about the numbers here. So I'm going to go none.
None.
Beckham. Oops.
The Giants guy in the office says none. Fascinating, okay?
Imagine that. Yeah, okay. Well,
Right,
we're talking
let's hear if you
fantasy
can
football
validate it.
here.
Let's hear if you can validate
Through
it.
4 games, his first 4 games last year, he had 24 catches, 307 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 41 targets. This year, through 4 games, 22 catches, 303 yards, no touchdowns on 39 targets.
Okay,
Pretty
that was
much
a lot of
identical
numbers.
numbers.
What are you
Identical
trying
numbers
to
other than
say?
the touchdowns.
Okay. All right.
Which he almost had a couple touchdowns this year. He was like a missed broken tackle. He got down to the 2 once, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The touchdowns will come. He's one of 12 wide receivers with more than 5 red zone targets. One of 9 wide receivers with at least 3 targets from inside the 5-yard line. Everyone's saying Cruz is there, Shepard's there. He's not going to see as many opportunities. He's getting the same looks, ton of usage. Xavier Rhodes shut him down. He's an emerging elite cornerback. I'm willing to throw this past week out the window. And moving forward, I have no concern with Odell Beckham unless he... No concern. I'm done. I'm going to shut up now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're on none.
Yes.
What is the appropriate level of concern for Odell Beckham, Christian?
The appropriate level of concern is some.
Some.
I actually have the exact same stats right here on my sheet that you did through the first 4 weeks. So from a numbers perspective, I agree with Brian. It's just the only difference is 2 touchdowns versus last year. All the numbers are the same otherwise and relatively healthy. Also, it's about to get better this week against the Packers, assuming Sam Shields is going to be out again.
Yep.
I think Odell could have a big game here. But
I do too.
you can't help but be concerned about all the antics and all the psychological stuff that he does not seem to be able to handle.
Remember Terrell Owens, Chad Johnson? They were
Yeah,
divas
but
too. Whatever.
they
put up
were
numbers.
They were divas, but I don't think they let it affect their performance on the field. Watching that game, pretty closely last week against the Vikings, after that incident with Rhodes on the sidelines, and then there was another incident. I think on the next play they kind of butted heads again after the play. And it really felt like Rhodes was able to knock Beckham out of that game, not physically but mentally, and that he wasn't really a factor after that because it was on that drive where he had 2 or 3 catches and it looked like, okay, here he comes. They're making a concerted effort to get Beckham back into this, and then nothing after that.
Okay,
They went back
but
away from
we're
it.
only 1 game removed from Odell Beckham getting into Josh Norman's head and ending up with a good overall game.
Yeah.
Early on, there was lots of barking and talking and everything, and at the end of it, he ended up kind of winning that war of words.
Yeah, it just feels like if you're going to go into every game having to worry about where Odell Beckham's head is and which side of this mental battle he's going to end up being on, it can't be a good thing. I mean, you can be a diva, that's one thing, but when you're letting it affect the way that you play, and sometimes you really get up for it because of that, and then it's good, but other times you can just be knocked out of the game entirely mentally. That part of it worries me, but just a little bit, just some. I'm not acutely worried. I don't think he's gonna go fetal and just stop playing football, and he's talented enough that he's gonna have some big games, no doubt about it.
You didn't sell me well enough that he's going to unravel. His game's going to unravel due to personality. And, I don't think there's enough evidence right now. Star to Brian. Let's go to our 5th and final player, and it's not a wide receiver for once. Running back, Latavius Murray. Right now, that's turned into one of the nastiest running back by committee situations in the NFL. Murray getting less than 50% of the total snaps, and that's a bit of a concern right now. Also, DeAndre Washington getting tons of usage when he's on the field. Also, something of a concern. Neither guy's a pass catching specialist, which is also, there are a lot of times these running back by committee situations. You go, well, at least I know he's going to catch all the passes. That's not necessarily the case either. So, what is the appropriate level of concern for the starting running back on an offense that's scoring a lot of points? Latavius Murray, Christian.
I'm going to go with some. This is for all the marbles here. This is
This is a
important.
biggie right now.
My winning streak is on the line. I'm going to go with just some on Latavius Murray. First of all, he's actually at 53% of the snaps. So
thank you
over
for the
half
season.
For if you're keeping track at home. He does have the 3 touchdowns. Has dominated red zone work. There hasn't been a ton, but he's gotten all of the looks inside the 10-yard line for the Raiders. Also has more targets than either of the other 2 guys, DeAndre Washington or Jalen Richard. I think the assumption is that those 2 guys are kind of the receiving backs, but the numbers don't bear that out. Murray has more receptions and more targets than either one of those guys. I don't like the trend. The trend is certainly downward.
It is. That 53% is built on, it's been kind of declining usage.
Well, sort of. So in a snap count percentage, Murray has gone 62, 48, 48, 57.
Okay.
So he actually bumped up last week. And interestingly, DeAndre Washington, the week that they came out and said, yes, he deserves more touches, they gave him more touches, but they gave him fewer snaps. He went from 28% of the snaps in week 3 to 17 in week 4.
What do you make of that?
I don't know. It's hard to know what to make of it, but except that clearly Washington and Richard are going to be involved here. It's about 50% of the time right now. If Washington had this trend where he was going 4 touches, 6 touches, 8 touches, 12 touches, that I would be more concerned about, because Washington is the guy that I am more concerned about. He's the guy who's capable of taking over Latavius Murray's role, but it really hasn't been that way. It's been 6, 7, 7, 8 for Washington. So the trends are going in the wrong direction for Murray, so you have to have some concern. But he's getting the red zone looks. I don't know if that's going to go away anytime soon, because he's been effective. He's scored 3 touchdowns. And he's getting the receptions. That's what you need to score fantasy points: receptions, touchdowns. So yes, I'm concerned about the trend and about only playing 50% of the snaps. You don't like to see that, but just some level of concern.
Now, as a critical follow-up, if Jalen Richard were actually Jalen Richard, what would you call him? What would Eric Decker's wife call him? Moving on, Brian.
I gotta
What
go.
What is the correct amount of concern for Latavius Murray?
I gotta go acute. For all the reasons that CP mentioned. The trend is going Washington's way. The touches are about equal.
That was my whole point.
No, I'm sorry. No, the snaps are about equal. But last week, Murray touched the ball just 29% of the time on his snaps. Washington touched it 73% of the time on his snaps. He was far more productive when he got the ball in his hands. Murray has.
Can you quantify that?
What do you mean?
He was far more productive, more yards per touch?
Yes, definitely. I don't have the totals, but he had more combo yards than
So
Murray.
we think
he
maybe,
more than
we
doubled.
think maybe that he was.
Okay. Maybe.
Anecdotally, it feels like
I remember
he
now.
probably was
Washington
more.
had more than double the combo yards of Latavius Murray last week.
Okay.
He was far more productive.
On a similar number of touches.
Yes.
Similar number of touches, yes.
No, actually, Washington had 2 less touches than Murray. Equal number of
similar.
snaps.
Similar number of
Fine.
touches.
Still less.
Okay.
So he doubled his yards per touch than
Okay.
Latavius Murray, who
Would
has
you call
topped
that-
100 yards and scored a touchdown just once in his last 24 games.
Who has?
Latavius Murray.
He scored a touchdown once in his last 24
He's had 100
games.
yards and a touchdown,
touchdown.
once in his last 24 games. Something you expect an RB1 or RB2 to do more than once in 24 games. And Murray is averaging 4.3 yards per carry. Washington is averaging 6.4. He's gonna take over the starting running back job. Granted, it'll stay a platoon probably, but Murray's touches are just going to go down, as are his numbers, and fantasy owners are going to suffer. So I'm selling him at the first opportunity I get. I'm very worried.
He's
about
never. Do you know
Latavius Murray.
DeAndre Washington has never scored an NFL touchdown
Okay,
ever
so
in his
he's
career?
played
Well, he's 4 games into his NFL
okay.
career.
Yeah, he's also getting 70. He's getting touches on 73% of his snaps, but he's getting like 6 snaps. So he gets whatever.
There's that. Gentlemen, it's time for a change.
Wow.
The 5th and final star. You didn't put any stars on your board.
No, Matt's doing it right now. Matt, they're right
These
here.
are right on the screen right there somewhere. I like the star on the board. It's good. It's good mojo. right
as
there. Like
you'll
that.
see, I was following the rules
That's
once
right.
again.
Stars on the board as you go.
This is under protest. I'm going
Yes.
to file an official protest.
Congratulations. We have a new champion.
Thank you.
It's been a good run. I mean, I don't think it's
Unprecedented.
unprecedented.
Really.
It really is unprecedented.
Yeah.
Nobody had ever won 3 straight in the panic room until you did it.
Yeah.
Next week you've been relegated now. Next week it'll be Matt versus Brian.
Yeah, Brian, just so you know, there's a cardboard box out there at your desk. You might want to start putting your things in there.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll be hearing from my lawyer.
Exactly. You know, do I have some regret now about the pity star? Yeah, a little bit.
Right.
I mean, had
He
I
wins
known
it on
how
the
it's going
pity
to turn
star.
out,
Yeah.
maybe I wouldn't have done that. But right now, our reigning champion for at least this week of the Panic Room, Brian Johnson.
Win's a
Congratulations.
win. Star is a star.
Hey, if you are in a fantasy hockey or basketball league, use LeagueSafe to handle all of your entry fee finance conundrums,
Yes.
problems, solutions, headaches. We will take care of all of that. And we'll throw $10 into your pot if you're a first-time user. Use the promo code FFAD, like Fantasy Football Almost Daily, FFAD, and you can, we'll throw $10 extra in. So fantasy not golf, I almost did it again. Fantasy hockey, fantasy basketball season is, drafting season is here right now. They had exhibition basketball on ESPN last night.
Yeah.
So it's that time of year. We're happy to help out with all of those issues as well at LeagueSafe. All right, tomorrow. What's coming up tomorrow on Fantasy Football Almost Daily?
I believe Matt and Brian do a Thursday pod.
Talk about the game
sometimes.
probably.
The Thursday game?
Generally shoot the S. I don't know. We'll figure it out. It'll be worth your while to watch. We'll put it that way.
All right. We will certainly hope that is the case. And then the big DFS DraftKings podcast
On Friday,
as well. So that's coming up over the rest of the week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you then.